most of this year, Halo Infinite's felt like it's kind of been stuck in limbo. Content-rich seasons were scrapped in favor of operations that, in comparison to the seasons, really seemed lackluster, focusing mostly on shop updates over, actual content. And then with the sudden flurry of leaks and announcements that we got in the latter half of this year about the future of Halo beyond Infinite, it really started to seem like Infinite was kinda just done. At least it did until now. So out of kind of nowhere, Halo Studios are dropping Halo Infinite's first true post-launch update, Operation Great Journey. Every update to Infinite so far has kind of just been adding content that really should have been there at launch, whereas this feels like the first truly new update. Big thank you to Halo Studios for giving me early access to this update. This isn't a sponsored video by any means, they just let me play the update early and make content on it, which is greatly appreciated. The update actually properly drops tomorrow morning as of the release of this video. So with that said, let's break down Operation Great Journey, Halo Infinite's first ever truly post-launch update. So, the tied biggest addition in this update is the addition of third-person mode. Now, this is something that people have kind of toyed with over the years with mods quite a lot, but no official Halo game has ever done a third-person mode before. Until now, and I gotta say, playing Halo in third person feels really, really cool, and also very strangely natural. Weirdly enough, Black Ops 6, that came out like a week and a half ago, added third-person options for at least zombies, and I gotta say, playing that compared to playing Halo Infinite's third-person, Infinite feels so much better. Where Black Ops 6 can kind of feel clunky in third person, and it's very clear that the game wasn't designed for it, Infinite surprisingly feels very smooth, and all the actions and the animations and the way the movement works in the game just kind of works perfectly with the third person camera. It really, even more so than I already wanted this, makes me want a third person Halo game. Bit of a tangent, but there are so many things they could do with a third-person Halo game, whether it's a single-player game or a multiplayer game. I mean, my wish is a third-person Resident Evil-style horror game, but we can keep dreaming. At the update's launch, the only option for third-person in matchmaking is going to be Firefight, but honestly, it's a really good way to kind of get you used to what is a very weird experience of playing Halo in third person, because unless you've played loads of those realism mods that they have on the Steam Workshop for like Halo Reach, for example, playing Halo in third person is going to feel very alien at first, so, destroying some Banished and some Covenant in third person is a great way to get you warmed up to the idea of it, because, trust me, it will feel slightly different. It's a perspective that, besides, of course, turrets or vehicles, we've never had before. Using a BR or a hammer or a rocket launcher in third person, nothing quite prepares you for it. But if you do want to play third-person PvP, you can very easily do so in customs. It's literally just a toggle in the settings. It's really, really easy to turn on. In fact, me and MintBlitz actually 1v1'd a few times in third person on about 200 ping. And I gotta say, sniping somebody in third person, especially when it's MintBlitz, feels very, very satisfying. When it comes to third-person PvP though, I will warn you there are some drawbacks kind of that are innate to the perspective of third person. Like, for example, you can corner peek, which I gotta say, coming from years of playing DayZ third-person servers, corner peeking people in Halo is so strange, man. I'm not used to it. There was also a bit of a game-breaking bug that we found where you can essentially shoot through walls. So I think what's happening here, as you can see on screen, is that where the crosshair is, which is like where the bullet is actually going to go, isn't lined up with the barrel of the gun, obviously because you're in third person. So even though on your screen you're crouched and like facing the wall and like none of you is visible, your crosshair is peeking around the corner, and because the bullets go where your crosshair is, you can essentially shoot people round corners, as you can see here. Me and Remy tried this out with a few guns. It didn't seem to work with the sniper rifle, but with the bandit, it was very, very consistent. This could be a little bit of a problem, because holding power positions in third person is going to be really busted when you combine this with corner peeking. But overall, I think PvP in third person is still a really fun experience. It's never going to be a super competitive experience. It's just kind of something fun to try out and mix things up a little bit. But the other major addition is something that I genuinely never thought we'd get again with this game. A brand new weapon. They've added the MA5K from Ghosts of Onyx. It's called the MA5K Avenger, and I'm gonna be honest, this is actually Infinite's first genuinely new weapon ever. So, a little bit of lore about this bad boy. It's essentially the carbine version of the MA5B, also known as the legendary Halo 1 assault rifle, and it popped up for the first time in Ghosts of Onyx. Now, I want to start out by saying how good it is that they finally added a new weapon, and a properly new weapon at that. I'm sorry, adding the DMR and the DMR without a scope did not constitute new weapons. Adding something that not only do we not expect to see in a game at launch, but that has literally never been in a Halo game before, absolutely constitutes a new weapon. And for that weapon to not only be such a cool one, but one that also has such a cult following is really, really cool. Also, I gotta say, I actually like the name. I thought calling the DMR the Bandit was honestly a little bit cringe, but the Avenger suffix kind of, to me, seems like a reference to maybe avenging Kurt, given the Ghost of Onyx tie-ins. I like to think so, at least. So, how does it function in game? Well, it's basically just a high fire rate glorified SMG with a 60 round mag. And that leads me to the next point, right? Now, as happy as I am that they've added this thing, and as cool as it is to use it, I gotta say, of all the weapons that they could have added to Infinite, this feels like the least impactful. I mean, functionally, it's literally just an assault rifle 2.0, which technically the SMG always was, but if your sandbox is lacking as many core weapons as Infinite's is, I kind of feel like adding a weapon as kind of redundant as this isn't the best choice. I mean, we still need the plasma rifle, a proper shotgun, the fuel rod gun, a brute shot, a spiker, and so many other weapons. There are so many other weapons that they could have added that would have been more functionally interesting and also more impactful on the sandbox than this. However, with that said, I do feel like we need to caveat this weapon. So, firstly, Infinite at this point is 3 years old, and let's be honest, it's not exactly been the most successful live service game. It's very clear that the game is now on kind of low power sustain mode, and so the resources very clearly aren't there for them to be creating entirely new weapons essentially from scratch. Secondly, it's very obvious to me that this weapon was meant to be a skin for the assault rifle that for some reason they actually decided to change into a unique weapon. I mean, just look at its animations compared to the assault rifle. They are exactly the same, just like 50% sped up. That said though, given that this game has basically felt like 30% video game and 70% shop for most of its lifespan, I've got to give the team credit for actually making this a new weapon and not a skin. I can imagine that there was probably a lot of internal pushback to turn what realistically would have been a very sellable skin of a fan favorite weapon into an actual weapon that doesn't directly generate revenue. And so for those reasons, I am willing to let a few things slide with the addition of the MA5K because, I mean, at the end of the day, we finally got one of the expanded universe's coolest weapons in a game. And given the surrounding circumstances of Halo Infinite, I think it's frankly a miracle that that even happened. Right, there are just two things that you gotta let me point out as a bit of a firearms nerd. Firstly, the MO5K is a carbine, but they've treated it as an SMG in-game. I mean, Halo Studios literally called it an SMG, which is, it doesn't matter. That's complete pointless stuff. That doesn't matter at all. Secondly, there's no ejection port on the gun, so when you're firing it, the empty cartridges kind of just appear at the side. Again, it doesn't matter. It's just, I saw this when I was in game, and I was like, I've just got to mention it for the sake of mentioning it. Sorry, I just had to do it. One balancing issue that I have with the weapon as well is that, again, like the rest of the automatics in Halo, and also literally every other weapon in Halo, it has a headshot multiplayer. I really hope that in future games, this philosophy of every weapon having a headshot multiplayer and that not being a trait specific to precision weapons gets thrown out, because I feel like it messes with Halo's sandbox balance way too much, and it makes the whole game just feel too competitive. I've been trying to point out recently why Infinite doesn't feel like a social game at any point, and I feel like that balancing is part of the reason why. Overall though, despite the caveats that I've said, this weapon is really, really cool, and I'm genuinely happy that we've actually got an actually brand new weapon in Halo Infinite. It took them 3 years, but it happened at the time when I think all of us were expecting it the least, so I'll give them props for that one. Okay, real quick break. If you're looking forward to playing this update or any other Halo or any other game for that matter, and you're after a iconic PC to play it on, well, look no further than my Flood-themed PCs made in partnership with Apex Gaming PCs. We've got the Pure Form, the Gravemind, and the super high-end Primordial builds to choose from. Very iconic indeed. If you want to pick one of these bad boys up for yourself, hit the link in the description. Okay, moving on to something that frankly gives me an existential crisis every time I talk about it. Halo 2 is turning 20 years old this month. My god. And to celebrate, among some other things, Halo Studios have added a brand new playlist, which is called Delta, and this is basically a classic gameplay Halo 2 playlist, full of Halo 2 maps and gameplay that has no sprint and no clamber. And I gotta say, this combination is so good. Let's start with the maps first. So, very fittingly, there are 7 remade Halo 2 maps in this playlist. There's a really beautiful recreation of Midship. There's Lockout, done kind of in a Halo 3 Guardian style, which is very fitting given the 2 maps connections. There's Sanctuary, done kind of in the OG aesthetic and also blended a little bit with the aesthetic of Forest. There's Warlock, and honestly, I can't even describe what this aesthetic is. It kind of looks a little bit like a Destiny map. Very unique. There's Beaver Creek that looks mostly similar to the original Beaver Creek. There's Turf, which also looks very similar to original Turf. There's Ascension, which I think out of all the aesthetics, this one is my favorite. I love the color palette and how kind of grim it looks, like very brutalist in its colors. I love the aesthetic of this one. And the coolest thing about all of these maps is that because of the gameplay being classic, they're all the same size as their original Halo 2 version. So it's not like in Halo 5 where they had to basically turn Midship into a big team battle map to make it work. They're all the right size. Moving on to the gameplay, having the classic gameplay back, I gotta say, it makes the game just feel so much more chill and more methodical as well, and just more enjoyable because you're not constantly worrying about people sliding around corners or curb sliding off ledges and stuff like that. It's just a much more chill experience that can be competitive at times, but just feels more social. I've also got to commend the kind of overall attention to detail in this playlist as well. So instead of BR starts or DMR starts or AR starts, it's MA5K starts, which, because it's meant to kind of simulate an SMG, is fitting given that obviously Halo 2 had SMG starts, although the MA5K is considerably more powerful than Halo 2's SMG ever was, so this could end up being a balancing issue at some point because of how powerful it is. They also made Oddball and King of the Hill their actual classic iterations, not infinites. And a little thing, but on Midship, you even spawn with plasma grenades over frag grenades, which, very minor detail. Well, I say that, it's actually not a minor detail. That's actually a pretty huge part of Midship's gameplay, but regardless, it's very cool that they actually made the effort to do that. There's even friendly player collision as well, which, granted, is something that absolutely should have never gone away. I still don't understand why they ever removed it, but it's really good to have it back. Please don't remove it again. I will say though, something that this mode really needs is strafe inertia. In fact, this extends beyond this playlist and to the entire game. Halo Infinite needs strafe inertia. Jiggle peeking and Infinite's kind of overall erratic strafing is really obnoxious and just very anti-socially designed. And you can really feel it in this playlist where the core movement and the core gameplay is kind of inherently a lot more social. That contrasting with people jiggle peeking and strafing at the speed of light isn't a great combo. This game would benefit so much from strafe inertia. Also, 2 other things that I'd like to see in this playlist. One of them is BR starts, so just like in classic Halo in Halo 2 and Halo 3, when you search for matchmaking, you should be able to get either SMG starts or BR starts. I think that would really work well with this playlist. And also, I'd love to see them add the classic power-ups as well. Now that they're actually in Infinite thanks to Illusion and their models look amazing, like, dude, look at this. How can you prefer those boring UNSC button power-ups to this masterpiece? I don't get it. I don't get it. Mr. Greencastle, another forger, even got these power-ups working in Infinite exactly as they did back in the day. You've got to add them to the playlist. Going back to the map designs, I gotta give all the creators for the maps props. I mean, firstly for making them, because they're amazing, but also secondly for making sure that all the original jumps and like little spots that were on the OG maps were kept in. At least all the ones that I tried, the jumps in particular that I tried, they were all there. And with map design, it's the little details like that that really go a long way, so props to that one. One final little criticism that I have, not necessarily the maps, but more so it's like Halo Studios' design philosophy for Halo Infinite maps in general, is please drop this kind of necessity for every weapon to spawn in a weapon locker. Not only do I think it's really unnecessary, but it really kind of clashes with the aesthetic of maps, because like, I'm on Midship, for example. I'm in the Pious Inquisitor. I mean, the map's literally called Inquisitor. Why is there a UNSC weapon locker on the wall? Or like, I'm walking around a forest, for example, like an ancient fort in a ruin in a forest, and there's a UNSC weapon locker. I know it's a real nitpick, but like, I just think it's so much more natural to have weapons like leaning up against a wall, or lying on the floor, or levitating, or something like that, than just being in the same weapon lockers on every map. It's just something that's irked me since Infinite came out. I was kind of hoping that it was only going to be a thing on the launch maps, but here we are 3 years later. I really hope for whatever the next game ends up being, they kind of drop this, because I don't see the point. Just like have them spawn against the wall. Was there really anything wrong with that back in the day? Either way though, this playlist is really, really cool, and I think in Halo Infinite's way is a good way to celebrate Halo 2's 20th anniversary. Oh my god, the existential crisis has returned. And speaking of said existential crisis and said anniversary, to celebrate, they've added the Halo 2 Mark 6 into the game, and oh my god, this armor looks genuinely incredible. Again, as I've said before with a lot of 343's or Halo Studios recreations in this game, very, very authentic. I'm still not quite used to playing a 343 game or a Halo Studios game and having armor in that game that actually looks like it belongs in Halo over like the god-awful knockoff Mark 6 that we got in Halo 4 and Halo 5. It is so refreshing. The artist that worked on this, major props. But of course, the elephant in the room is that, once again, just like the Mark V, the only way to get this beautiful armor is by paying for it. To be quite honest, guys, I'm really tired of criticizing the whole shop thing with Infinite. I've said my dues at this point. Clearly, the business team just don't care about anyone's feedback, so it is what it is. Either way, though, like I said before, massive credit to the artists for working on this model, because it legitimately looks amazing. You all knocked it out of the park. Some people have an issue with it being a kit over like individually customizable armor pieces, and I'm kind of two minds in this topic, right? So obviously in a perfect world, I'd love for this to have been a Mark 6 core where I could customize each individual piece of the armor, and they added all the classic Halo 3 armor as well that I could customize piece by piece, and I could finally get my Halo 3 recon back. I would love for that to happen. But unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world, do we? Quite far from it. In the world that we live in, you know for a fact that they take all that Halo 3 armor that, like, part of the reason it's so beloved and iconic is because of how you unlocked it by playing the game, and just lock it behind a paywall. Like, you know that would happen. So, I don't know, maybe this is controversial, but I'm actually kind of happy they just made Mark 6 a kit so they don't stain those beautiful armors by locking them behind a paywall, because that, for me, would really ruin them. Moving on, they also added the XM55 Marine Armor, which is prototype Marine Armor adapted from Mjolnir. And I gotta say, this looks really, really cool. It's kind of a blend of the Marine helmet in Halo Infinite and Mark 7's helmet, which is a beautiful helmet still. Looks really, really good, especially with this kind of like desert digital camo. Very cool combo. And then, in fitting with the name of the operation, they've added 2 sets of Elite Armor. Firstly, Thermelion, I believe that's how it's pronounced, which I assume you unlock in the Battle Pass, given that it's center stage on the Battle Pass's thumbnail, and this armor is Half-Jaw-inspired Mjolnir. It's even complete with his 2 intact mandibles on the right side of the helmet, which is very, very, very cool. The shoulders and the chest piece of this armor are also very Halo 2 Anniversary Elite designed as well, so if you want to go out there LARPing as a Spartan Elite, then, well, that's the armor for you. And then the second set of armor is the return of Helioscrill, which I've got to say was one of the few universally loved armors from Halo 5. However, this time, it comes with a really cool attachment that turns the helmet into a very Halo 2 classic Arbiter helmet, which looks, I think, really, really, really cool. Now, yes, I hear what you're all saying. 343 will literally make Elite Mjolnir for Spartans before adding playable elites, and although I agree, at this stage in Infinite's life cycle, I think expecting them to add playable elites is honestly just unrealistic. For the next game, absolutely. I would honestly go as far as saying that in the next game, playable elites are a necessity and they need to be there. But for Infinite, as it stands now, I'm sorry, but there's no way in hell you could expect them to add playable elites. We had to fight tooth and nail to get a new weapon that's essentially just a glorified assault rifle. There is no way in hell they're going to go out and create entirely new bipeds with new animations and new effects and new sound design and new texture. It was never going to happen, as much as that hurts me to say. And then, for the new weapon models, they've added the original Halo 2 rocket launcher, which, I gotta say, looks amazing, and also, I didn't realize how much I love this design until this point. I really, really like this. But even better, they've added either the Halo 2 or Halo 3 sniper model, and this time, unlike the one that they added last year, it by the looks of it at least, will actually look like the Halo 2 or Halo 3 sniper model. Unfortunately, I can't verify how accurate it is because we didn't have this model in the build that we played, but honestly, if that spanker is anything to go by, then I imagine the model is gonna be pretty much perfect. Personally, I really don't like Infinite Sniper model. I really just wish that they'd go back to using either the exact Halo 1, Halo 2, or Halo 3 design in the future, and honestly, I have a feeling that that might just be reinforced even more when I see this model. But again, I've got to caveat these models and also the really cool new armor with the fact that most of it is probably just going to be in the store or locked behind some kind of paywall. I swear to God, the next Halo multiplayer needs a dynamic, gameplay-based, long-term unlock system like Halo 3, Halo Reach, and Halo 4 had. Almost everything in this game just being locked behind a paywall and that being the only way to unlock it, it makes it so soulless. Part of the charm of cosmetics, at least in the older Halo games, was the journey that you went on to unlock it. Like, in Halo 3, everyone's got a story of how they got security, or katana, or EOD, or like in Reach, everyone's got a story of like how they got inclement weather, or pestilence. Like, you can't have that in a game like this, where the story is, oh yeah, I whipped out my credit card. But I'll leave that there because we've spoken about this in great detail over the last 3 years, and here we are still talking about it, right? So, overall, relative to the updates that Infinite's had so far this year, this one, Operation Great Journey, is frankly a night and day improvement. It is without a shadow of a doubt Halo Infinite's first proper post-launch update, but it leaves the game in a rather weird spot. Is this update just a one-time final send-off banger for the game? Or is it a sign of Halo Studios having a renewed investment in Halo Infinite? And if so, does that mean that we could finally see the double-barreled shotgun and, God forbid, the Falcon make its way into the game? Let me know your thoughts on that down below in the comments. And with that said, let's round this video out there. I want to give a huge thank you to my amazing patrons for the continued support over there as per usual. Thank you all so much, and thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one.